Welcome back. You've probably heard of Jason Baerg. He's a multidisciplinary artist and fashion designer who has caught the attention of fashion's biggest names. Our Jeanne Beker recently sat down with Jason to discuss his work, the inspiration behind it, and what drives him to create his art.
This is a constellation, 7 generations into the future. So really I think about a portal for safety that we can all walk through. I didn't go to fashion design school, but you know, my mom taught me how to sew, my mom taught me how to draw. My mother, Doris Lanigan, Centre for the Métis Nation of Ontario, she's always been a woman who has been deeply invested in community. So I was really raised in that way to just, you know, facilitate good energy in space, in communities.
Both your grandmother and your mother went to residential schools. Were these the kinds of stories that you grew up with? Did they talk about their experiences there?
No. I think that was a very trying, hard history. She speaks of how her grandmother didn't know her own birthday because she went to residential school and they didn't celebrate those things. So, you know, there's a real uncertainty about personhood when you're removed from your language, you're removed from your customs, and even something so personal as your birthday. So yes, my great-grandmother and my grandmother went to St. Michael's in Duck Lake. My mother went to day school in Victoire at a convent, and I myself just applied to day school for reparations as well. So the impacts across these lands are horrible. And I think when you look at a person like me, you know, I'm not, you know, a person you would pick out of the street as Indigenous, but when you think about 4 generations of resiliency.
I found in my own personal experience, it was the tales of hardship and discrimination that my parents faced, you know, as Jews in Nazi Europe. That was the stuff that kind of made me who I am, because you know, and there's a trauma too 100%. Sometimes that it really exists with these, you know, the next generation. I mean, is that true for you at all?
Through hardship, we bring forward sensitivity, and we use that in a good way. You know what I mean? And I think that's the flip side of hardship, is that we're human, and we see each other, and we support each other, and that's what survival takes. Yeah, I would say that's part of my people. I come from very kind people.
You do?
I do. I come from
Your
very
father
kind
did
people.
not encourage your dreams, though.
I think that he held a really high bar for me to jump towards. And I think that I'll be forever grateful. But yeah, he's a fundamental, born-again Christian, football coach, kind of everything that would challenge a two-spirit person like myself. So,
how would you say being a two-spirit person has informed your art?
Oh, I think it's about passion and relationality. I think I really relate to both men and women, but I think I appreciate both spaces in fashion. Gender is completely a construct, you know? So like, how can we supersede all of these expectations?
Well, evidently, obviously, you're such a spiritual being, and that's something that your work is just so rife with, this kind of spirituality. How do you prepare for maybe creating some of these things that you do, even sending them out there into the world? I mean, what is that spiritual process that you go through?
I think about all art, and let's call fashion art, really sacred. Like, imagine our first songs, imagine the first dances. It would have been about the desire to connect, you know? We do things for people, and I think that echoes from the land as well. Materials are a real part of the language. You know, like what can a leather do? What can silk do? What can fur do? What can beads do? Yeah, so listening to them as well, listening to the materials. And I think about how it also affects us in our imagination when we're looking at something, or when we're looking at something in movement, you know, like it's a big game up there, right?
When I think back to, you know, when I started covering the fashion scene in the mid-'80s, precious few Indigenous designers that were around, like Darcy Moses,
yes.
Dorothy
Wonderful,
Grant.
wonderful.
But beautiful artists
Yes.
who never really made it in that way, never got the recognition they deserved.
I want to acknowledge all of those people who have been carving paths and making amazing contributions to fashion. I think we owe it to those people ahead of us to open the doors for them. I mean, to be relevant, I think like we have to really feel the heartbeats of our community and others. So like, I am deeply invested in what my community think of me, and I do want to make a contribution, and I do want to advance with everyone.
And we are lucky enough to have Jason and Jeanne here with us today. Welcome to both of you. I'm so happy you're here.
Oh.
Just before we get into it, you know, Jason, you're recently back from sharing your work at the Santa Fe Indian Market, which was celebrating 100 years of showcasing incredible Indigenous art. You made a splash. So your designs were noticed and covered by some of the biggest names in fashion. You know, a magazine called Vogue. A few of us have heard of that. Women's Wear Daily, Fashion Magazine. So tell me a little bit about being in that space and being celebrated, you know, when it's the Santa Fe Indian Market Centennial. What did that feel like?
Think about 100 years of refinement and championing our arts. And really, it's kind of Mecca. It is Indigenous art Mecca. So, you know, I was very honored just to be present, let alone present. So, yeah, I'm really grateful for that opportunity. And I think about Amber Donbert-Robe, the curator behind the Art of Indigenous Fashion at Mokna at the museum. She did a fantastic exhibition. It's up now, as well as curated a great run of runway shows. So
I love the shout out.
Yeah.
Jeanne, you've seen it all. You've been doing this for a long time. So what was it about Jason's work that just stood out to you?
You know, you talk about a new age designer, that's this guy. Jason is designing from the heart. He is designing as a storyteller, first and foremost. So you get so many more layers in his clothing, fashion, artwork, I mean, whatever you want to call it. It's an interesting hybrid than you do in, you know, in a regular fashion garment that we see. So it's just an incredible mode of storytelling in fashion that I'm absolutely enthralled with.
Metaphoric and literal layers, and you're going to see that. So beautiful promo.